Thank you, Kevin. Our next speaker will be Haven Baker. Haven is the General Manager and Vice President of Plant Sciences at the J.R. Simplot Company, one of the largest privately held food and agribusiness companies in the country with annual sales of approximately $6 billion. In his capacity, Haven is responsible for identifying and commercializing new agricultural technologies. Haven built the strategy and team for Simplot's biotechnology potato effort. Recently, the USDA approved Simplot's genetically engineered Innate potato with consumer and crop benefits. Haven has significant experience at the intersection of technology and business. He served as a senior scientist at the Barnett Institute at Northeastern University and later worked as an investment professional at Clarion Capital before joining Simplot in 2009. Haven received a BS from Yale University, a PhD in chemistry from Northeastern University, and an MBA with distinction from Harvard Business School. Haven grew up on a farm in Moses Lake, Washington. Please welcome Haven Baker.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, this morning. It used to be that we got quite a bit of attention for this innate technology, and everyone was a little antsy about it, and you'd get up and people were a little nervous. And as I look out this morning, I can see it's pretty relaxed, and that's kind of nice. We've been around to supermarkets all over the country, selling potatoes and getting people excited about a better potato. And what's happened in the last month is GMO salmon got approved. Tell you what, compared to salmon, potatoes are a non-issue. And it's just changed the debate, and it seems like the world's moved on. I'll probably talk a little bit more about it at the end. A little over a month ago, I was in Australia with the chairman of the board, Scott Simplot, and we were introducing this project. And Scott started with the words, "The potato's been very good to our company," and that is true. We've been in potatoes 80 years, and What I'm going to show here is really an outsized investment in R&D and research. Then I'll show you the commercialization, how we're doing, where we're selling the potatoes, and lastly, some thoughts about where this is going, how it's relevant to the fresh potato industry, and how maybe technology changes the potato industry over the coming 10 years. If you were to go around the world and look at who's working on potatoes, from a science and technology perspective, the biggest center for potato research in the world is Wageningen University in the Netherlands. And they are the Harvard of agriculture. They are really, really, really good. You can't not go there and come away except to be really, really impressed. And Wageningen probably has 90 or 100 people working on potato research in various forms or factors. The second biggest center is probably the James Hutton Center in Scotland, and they probably have 50 people working on potato R&D, and it's maybe not all full-time, but some way, shape, or form. We have about 100 at Simplot Plant Sciences and about 40 in R&D, so somewhere in there, we're the second or third biggest potato research effort in the world now. And I'm going to hopefully show you that investment's paid off. Before I get into that, I wanted to start with an example. Not many of us compare potatoes and tires, but this is a good example. So Henry Ford invents the Model T, and of course production takes off, and all of a sudden you need all the components of an automobile, and tires were a big one. And so I'm not sure why, for whatever reason, the tire industry got birthed in Akron, Ohio. And any of you from Ohio here, you know that Akron's got some pretty big mansions from some of those tire barons. So from early 1920s until 1972, the tire industry does not change. There are 5 companies. You can see them there on your right. Firestone, BF Goodrich, Universal, etc. And basically a tire is a bias ply tire, and it lasts about 12,000 miles. And because there were 5 tire companies, and by the end of World War II, only 3 automobile makers, the tire industry never made any money selling tires to the automobile industry, right? Because they almost sold at near cost. And where the tire industry made their money was everyone having to change their tires every 12,000 miles. And so you had this fragment. It was a commodity. It was an old production process, and nothing changes. Now, radial tires get invented somewhere in the 50s. And by the late 60s, both the Japanese and the French had figured out how to manufacture radial tires, steel-belted radials. And they went over to bring it over to the U.S., and the tire manufacturers were utterly against it. And this is why. They made their money selling 12,000-mile tires, and now a radial tire could last 40 or 50,000 miles. And they said, oh, it's the end of our industry. We'll never make money again. And so they resisted the technology. And so Michelin comes and gets on the market anyway. And in the early 1970s, there was a rollover that killed a family. And it was caused by a tire blowout, and it could have been prevented with a radial tire. And within a couple of years, 50% of the tire industry was radials, and within a couple more years, it was all radials. And it wiped out all these companies. Michelin came over, and the Japanese bought a couple. But the tire industry fundamentally ceased. And now that happened fast, and that was what technology did. Now I'm not suggesting that there's going to be wipeouts or anything like that in potatoes, but I think that what I want to say is that technology is going to change the industry. It is. And even if we just see that Canadian slide they showed, where they showed production increases from 1986 to today, no one sitting in the late 80s would have said, hey, yields are going to go up 30%. Right? We wouldn't have believed that. But I'm showing you today that what's coming is going to be amazing. Okay, so innate potatoes. Innate, we use that term because it's potato genes in potatoes. You've probably seen some of the marketing around that. Our Gen 1 product has low acrylamide, which we don't talk about too much about, but it does reduce acrylamide about 65-75%. And then it reduces bruise. And in Burbank's, it reduces it by about half, and in Ranger by a third. Now, when we do these kind of tests, this is rigorous scientific data. This is the absolute number of bruises. What's left, you still have some other bruises, and they're usually a lot smaller. And so for practical matter, your innate potatoes end up being bruise-free. Now, if you perforate the surface or get some other infection, you can still get fusarium and all those other things, but bruise tends to go away. So this is what it looks like in the last 3 years worth of data on packouts. So you have Bravos means Burbank, and Romeo means Rangers. So these are potatoes that have been stored in most cases, 8 or 9 months, packed out either in May or July. And you can see the Burbank packouts are usually in the mid 70s. And we think that'll continue to be the case. You'll have Burbank packouts in the 70 percentiles through your storage season. The Rangers can get higher packouts because of their shape, but they have other issues. I mean, actually, sorry, because of their size profile, but because of their shape, we're not sure that the Rangers are right for the fresh market. So we're still exploring that. But we're reasonably confident about the Burbanks. And if you were to store an innate Burbank and a regular Burbank side by side, your innate Burbank's going to have 10 to 15% higher packouts through the storage season. Now, that's sort of at the end, and so it gets better as storage goes on and you get more bruise damage in your regular potatoes. And so that's significant. For the customers that care about potato quality and potato bruise, this matters, and that's especially in the food service industry. They don't like potatoes that cut black, as you all know. So a couple things on about consumer acceptance. There's been, everywhere in agriculture, there's this debate all over the world about the acceptance of GMO. I can tell you from our perspective, doing our market research in the States, this is kind of what it looks like. So if you were to ask the American population, and do you support GMO, and around a third say yes. If you were to ask, are you against it, about a third say, no, I'm against it. And that middle third will vary their answer depending on how you ask the question. If you position the technology in a positive light, it'll come up that 65-70% support it. If you position it in a real negative light, it'll be the same against it. So that's how you can get both sides of the country, which is those are for biotech and those are against, saying, hey, the population's with us. I can show you and this is really interesting from an agriculture perspective. If you ask about traditional plant breeding, only about 2/3 of the population finds that acceptable in America. So that same 1/3 that doesn't like GMO doesn't like traditional plant breeding either. So our goal with innate technology was not to win over everybody. Our goal was to be as acceptable as traditional plant breeding. And that's as acceptable as the potatoes we're using today. And we think that's largely the case, and I'll show you some evidence of that. And again, that's by using potato genes in potato. So no foreign genes, just sticking with potato genes in a potato. This is how we show the, if you've read it in the articles over the years, this is one of the pictures we've used, but bruise waste causes about 400 million pounds of waste a year. Now, some of that does go to DHI, others go to cattle. But the massive amount of bruise waste is at the consumer level. So consumers buy a bag of potatoes and they throw away 1/3 of it. About half of that is bruise and the other half's greening. So when you add that all up, that's 1.5 billion pounds of potatoes that are thrown away because of bruise loss. So that's significant. In a world of rising population, rising middle class, it's going to get where we can't afford to have that waste in the system. I'm not saying it's there now, but that's the way we're heading. And so the innate potato, more of it's going to reach the consumer. And those that are interested in carbon footprint can see that there's CO2 and water and pesticide savings. Let me show you this focus group. So we've been tried to understand how to talk about innate technology. And we went right into California, and this particular focus group, go ahead and hit play. This particular focus group is the people that are generally against GMOs and biotech. And let's see how they react as they hear the innate story. Yeah, this is in California. You got to go right to the heartland. Activism there. Heavy organic buyers.
I prefer organic. I try to shop at farmers markets. They're local. You can ask them questions about where, they farm, where they get their produce from.
I like my food to, be grown from the way God made it and not like genetically engineered in some lab.
That's what concerns me about like the GMOs and things like that, is that I know they've been tested and I know that they have, these scientific backings. I don't feel that it's been long enough.
Is this like potato a creation of something?
Genetically modified.
Exactly.
It's just bad,
If it's been genetically modified, I'm really probably going to steer away from it. That's just me.
I would educate myself further on it. I'm open to discussion. I'm more apt to buy it because they are using less water and less poison.
Right.
I think the positives outweigh the negative in this case.
And I think potato to potato, I probably wouldn't be opposed to that.
So positive, like you're genetically modifying this potato to be stronger.
But honestly, like if I went to the store and this was with the budget, with all of those different circumstances, I would probably buy it.
Sure.
Knowing the research, knowing the information that you've introduced, knowing knowing that it's only that one gene, no chemicals, no nothing, I would.
Okay.
I would buy the potato.
So, my personal experiences mirrors this sort of reaction too. I give talks all over the world. I was in the UK last week. I remember talking to a group that seemed like about a third organic last April. And generally I get these sorts of reactions too, which is to say, hey, we haven't trusted GMOs in the past, but if there's environmental benefits and it's potato and potato, I'm okay with it. And as we've gone out and now actually been selling, now we're in our second season, that's what we've seen. There's kind of the two types of consumers. I'm ready to try it, or I want to try it, but let me just have someone else try it first. But the negatives, the people that, hey, I'm against this sort of thing, that is a very, very small percentile. And I think that's, demonstrated by this potato genes and potato story and the benefits that can be delivered for environmental sustainability. So this is the rollout. I'm going to talk about our strategy here. It's the first time we've talked about it in such a big group. Fresh cut. The lettuce industry moved from heads of lettuce that were being sold 20 years ago to where you can still buy those, but it's mostly packaged salads. And of course, convenience is a big driver in that. And we believe, and we've got some research to support it, that, actually this is a really funny study. The number one, the worst job in the kitchen is doing dishes. The second worst job, according to whoever did the research study, is peeling potatoes. And so, that's been around a long time, right? That's part of the negative of potatoes. But the second thing is who's got the time to peel potatoes anymore? And so this innate technology where you have this non-browning can deliver a product that delivers a whole uncooked potato, or maybe it's cut up for the use you need, with a shelf life up to 14 days. And so that saves that convenience. So we think this is a bright spot. Now, it's only a possibility. We got to get out there and sell the heck out of it, but it's really a possibility for increasing demand. And so we started trials just recently last fall, and it's starting to roll forward. If this is successful, we'll be putting in facilities for the fresh good industry. In food service, they used to buy onions, but who wants to peel and chop onions in the back of kitchens? The restaurant industries buys cut up onions now. And so that's where potatoes could go, and it would increase the number of potato dishes being served. The second part is, of course, the fresh whole market, the table market, which you are all deeply interested in. We are marketing those as white russets, as a varietal, as a better product. So this is how the branding sort of works. Right in the middle is white russets. And on the back of the right up front on the package, I don't know how well you can see it, especially in the back, it says easier to use, less bruising. So we're getting right out front with the benefits. On the back of the package, it talks about the best traits from wild and domestic species. And then it has a website, and it has a 1-800 number. And then you can go to the website, and it has the biotech story, the innate story, potato genes and potatoes, how we did it, that sort of thing. On the right, you can see some of these results. Now, we are in probably 1,200 or 1,300 stores now. We've sold, let's see, somewhere in here I've got the data for you. We've sold about 12 million pounds, and it's gone really well. On the acceptance side, so one thing you want to know is, all right, so people have it out there. What are they saying? We've been on the market since May, but we had to go off the market a little bit because we sold out. So 5, 6, 7 months. We've had 2 phone calls and 10 emails for 12 million pounds. If you look at social media, it's just been really quiet. We'll get a press article now and then when we get an approval from the FDA or the USDA or something, but it's just generally quiet. Like I mentioned earlier in my slide, in some ways, the debate's moved on. I mean, it's still extremely relevant for us in the potato industry, but the articles about biotech are going to be, should we fix the hereditary diseases in our children? And about the salmon and things like that. That's what's happening now. And so that's sort of where this is going, and acceptance has been great. All right, a couple technology slides, and then I'll wrap this up. Innate Generation 2 will be officially launched in 2017, so we'll start working on getting growers this coming fall. It contains 2 additional traits. Late blight resistance and cold sweetening or cold storage. And so, of course, one of the problems with potatoes is under environmental stresses or cold storage conditions, they build sugars. And that makes them hard to use in the processing industry, whether that be chips or fries. Chips are frozen. And we've got a whole booth on this, so I didn't put any slides in, but if we've figured out a way to control the accumulation of sugars. And so whether it's a zebra chip issue or environmental stresses relate to sugar ends, this technology will help to reduce potato defects, and you're going to be able to store them a lot colder and not worry about the storage losses that we used to. It'll change how we think about storing potatoes, and probably about how we grow them too. Now that's what the booth's about. So real quick on late blight, potatoes have 4,000 wild relatives. Some of those evolved resistance to late blight. And a British scientist figured out one of those genes, and we licensed it from him. And this field right here has been exposed to late blight, and then it hasn't had fungicides. And the controls there, which are your normal potatoes, are deader than a doornail, and the innate potatoes are vibrant and next to them. Now, What this technology does is give you 24-hour protection. Now, it's going to, at least in this iteration, it's only going to reduce sprayings, we say 25 to 50%. We're going to still need some prophylactic spraying just to make sure that everything's okay. But over time, we're going to be able to reduce the fungicide use across our fields, and you won't have the susceptibility. So this is what the technology pipeline looks like. I talked about Gen 1. I've talked about Gen 2. I wanted to mention Gen 3. We're adding more of these genes that give resistance to late blight. So the one we put in Gen 2 is against all North American strains. We're adding more genes against a whole bunch of other strains that are around the world. So that way, if one of them ever got imported here, we'd have the protection already in place in the plant. PVY resistance. We've got a technology solution for all the PVY strains. And the science is done here, okay? Gen 2, we're bulking seed. That launches next year. Gen 3, the research is done. We're just making the plants. And so that'll launch in 2020. Once you have the research figured out, it takes about 5 or 6 years to make the potatoes, get the data for the government, and get it approved, and of course get the seed and get selling. So it takes a little bit, and it can take even longer than that too. So this is where the science is done. And so then there's a whole other program on research, and I wish that'd be a fascinating talk for another time, but I just want to show you one slide. So this is the second year in a row that this was done for us. So we'll show these results. This is what we call late stage R&D. What you see here is 6 or 8 rows of potatoes, and we've used drip tape underneath, and you have randomized blocks down the middle, so everything's reproduced. And so with drip tape, and this is done in western Idaho, so there's no rain, you can completely control the irrigation. And of course, those yellow lines have 100% the water, the middle have 75%, and the left there have 50%. And what you see there on the right is 5 different genes that we're testing that all give between 7 and 15% improved yields under half the water. And that'll translate to full water conditions too. So now, why is that possible? I mean, that seems unfathomable, right? Step back in agriculture. One, we're dealing with a plant that's got a root system. It's a little bit bigger than our heads, not that big of a root system. The second thing is we've all grown varieties that can have top growth that, vegetative growth that can be, 18 inches tall, or it can be 6 or 8 feet tall. And so what we need to do is send that energy that the plant was putting into vegetative growth down into the ground where we get paid. And we can do that now. Now, it's still a lot of research, but this is real, and one of these is going to come to market. And, it'll be worth 10 or 15% yield probably. We've got a couple other traits where we're getting similar results. And so I don't know that they'll all work in combination, but the research is just exciting, and it seems like it accelerates every year. The other thing to keep in mind is, none of us are using anywhere in agriculture 100-year-old equipment, 100-year-old fertilizer, maybe 100-year-old water. But yet the genetics we're using in potatoes are, at least with the Burbank, is 100 years old. North Dakota's maybe a slight improvement for some things, but these are really primitive genetics relative to something like corn or even dairy animals. Okay, a couple comments on seed. We don't want any seed mixing. For this case, we're only working with a few seed growers. Generally, the farms have to be Innate only, or for sure the fields in a couple situations. They're segregated, they're isolated. We're testing for the latest diseases, whether that be tobacco rattleritis or golden nematodes, to make sure none of these emerging threats are in the seed. And the growers that have Innate seed will see a consistent canopy, and it'll be high quality seed to match the technology. And so this is something that we'll talk more about in the coming years, but improving seed and seed quality is really important to us. Okay, where's the growth going to come from? So I think we're familiar with this chart. On a per capita basis, potato consumption is declining. In a couple sectors, it's growing on a production standpoint, but that's either going to export or some of these other markets. We would all like to see the potato industry grow. And so a couple possibilities. Maybe fresh cut can provide that. We don't know, we're hopeful. The second is I'm going to show you our varietal strategy. Could white russets help? Could they reignite some growth in the potato category? I want to compare that to apples in just a minute. And I think the last thing is to step back and say, hey, and this will be a call to the industry. If yields are going to go up, what else can we do with potatoes? So Honeycrisp apples. I remember picking these a few years ago in Massachusetts, having a nice crisp apple, and then going to the next tree and having, I think it was like Gala or something, and having another nice crisp apple. And I know that's a nice apple, but what's the difference? You know, the Honeycrisp apple tastes great and it's crispy, but this is a storage trait. What's interesting about the Honeycrisp is it's consistently crispy through storage, which some of the other varieties have struggled with. And so it has this great consumer appeal. It's a lot more, it's a consistent consumer appeal. So if you see down there, the Honeycrisp apples sell for between $2 and $2.50. Other apple varieties are between $1 and $1.50. And then, you know, the Honeycrisp sell organics. And so that's important to keep in mind that this better product, this branded product, has quite a premium in the apple market. So I guess the question to ask is, okay, Honeycrisps come on the market. We're all familiar with it. They're a big success. They get their own little shelf in the supermarkets. What did that do to the rest of the apple industry? Was it a substitution where they took volume from everyone else? Or was it additive where they were able to raise a, you know, kind of a rising tide lifts all boats sort of scenario? And the data says that while Honeycrisp apples have tripled, the rest of the apple industry has grown too, and grown a lot. And so what we see here, at least in this example, and I understand this is not maybe a perfect analogy, but a better product, a branded better product, has raised the whole industry from a consumer perspective. Now, if you'd looked at the previous 10 years, demand would have been flat to declining. And so the Honeycrisp apple has really been a benefit to the apple industry. We think the white russet potatoes have the possibility of doing the same thing. That's one of the reasons we want to see you support it. So, a couple similarities here. Apples are owned by the University of Minnesota. There's a select group of growers growing them. They have a premium. Innate potatoes, of course, we own the technology. We're working with Patandin and RPE. And we have long-term marketing agreements. Anyone can grow, but Patandin and RPE are going to market them. And that's going to provide, you know, a consistent message to the retailers. And we think there's a consumer benefit. You'll see it in convenience and fresh cut, and you'll see it in better quality in the white russets. Just briefly on this slide, so this gets to something for those of you that are industry leaders to really think about. The corn's seen dramatic yield increases over the last 20 years. Some of it's been to breeding and the better sciences, and some of it's been to the GMO. And so the acreage also went, at the same time yields were going up, acreage went from 70 million acres to 95 million acres. And the reason prices didn't go down is that ethanol use went up. Of course, the ethanol industry is a little shaky today with where oil prices are. But I think what I've tried to show previously that the yields are going to go up in potatoes. And so one of the places we're exploring is what else can we do with potatoes besides eat them? We either need to export them or eat them, or the acreage is going to shrink because yields are going to go up. And so there is room for entire industry collaboration on this. There's a company in Idaho working on plastics. We'd like to see them successful. Anybody else that has ideas for what else to do with potatoes. Now, the energy play is probably not the right play right now, but we need to be more creative as an industry about this. Final thoughts. Where are we going over the next 10 years? Technology. So 3 or 4 years ago, I sat down with Mark McKellar. He's the president of our food group. And we were talking about Gen 2, and we just finished the science in Gen 2, and he said, well, you know, I can see where yields are going to go up because of cold storage and because of late blight, and after that, you're probably done, right? There isn't any other way to improve potatoes. And I agreed with him. And I was wrong. With the advent of technology and stuff from the medical sciences coming over, technology is going to continue to improve yields. Now, I know most of us are managing our businesses from one year to the next, and this stuff takes 5, 10 years, sometimes a generation. But as you look out over the business of the next 10 years, I'm trying to tell you that yields are going to go up, and quality is going to go up too, and the risk is going to go down in growing potatoes. And so we haven't got everything. We'd love to have a solution for verticillium, for example, but we're working on these things, and the potato farm in the future is going to have more yield and less risk. Another thought on seed. We're setting to be responsible and to be good stewards. We're setting up this separate seed system for Innate. You know, given some of the historical declines we've seen in acreage, and with us setting up the system, there's probably too much seed in the system. And this is something that we as an industry need to think about. But there's probably too much seed, and we've got to work for a solution on that and be aware of it. Innate growth expectations. So we planted 400 acres in 2014. 2,700 acres in 2015. I mean, our customers, our growers did. And this coming spring, we expect to plant about 6,000 acres. I didn't talk about regulatory, but we're working on all these international approvals. And as Japan and China and some of these other countries come in, the acreage will expand. But we believe that, there's going to be an inflection point where this technology, these bruise-resistant potatoes and eventually more sustainable potatoes, are going to be wanted by the industry, and I don't know when that rocket shift lifts off. I can't tell, but all indications are the demand's going to be strong, and so we'll have to work together to figure out how to grow this. But we're past most of the acceptance issues, at least right now. Lastly, the sustainable and environmental issues will continue. This is what resonates both with consumers and with our big customers. They have sustainability mandates. They need to improve their supply chains, and we think this is the exact right solution for the potato industry, and I hope you do too. Thank you very much, and I'll take one or two questions. Yeah.
So, I know in the U.S., GMOs are, we've been eating them for years, but like some of our export markets, like I export to markets where like no GMOs is part of the rules, like Asia, you mentioned that. If things kind of like worries get out, there's cross-contamination, I know you talked about it. Yeah, as far as if something blows up in export markets, do you have any plans as far as to stamp that out, or what's your?
Yeah, so one, it's a common misunderstanding that that GMO is not exported. The soy and the corn goes all over the world, and what those countries do is those have import approvals. And so we are working with the potato industry to get import approval so that can go in. Now, I think where you're touching on another sticky point is that, we don't have labeling laws here in the U.S. I think we're moving towards a voluntary labeling standard. But some of these other countries, even when you can get import approval, at the consumer level, they might have a labeling requirement. And so most companies won't sell their products at the consumer level. But I'll tell you what, at the food service level, the restaurant level, everywhere else, these products are everywhere, whether it's soy or corn, and that doesn't matter whether it's Europe, China, or Japan. And so the answer to your question is we've got to get these import approvals, so if it were to get over there, even though we didn't intend it, that it would be legal to be there. Yeah?
Do you foresee being able to control greening potatoes?
We work with potato research centers all over the world, and I haven't seen a solution for that yet. We'll keep our eyes open, but we don't have that. Would I foresee that it's controllable? Absolutely, but it's not in our pipeline now, so that probably means it's 10 years out unless we find a miraculous discovery. All right. Well, hey, thank you for your time and attention. Appreciated it.